So what would be helpful tonight, anybody who has a question, of course, is welcome to raise it, but I would be just happy to hear what you noticed in that meditation that we did just tonight. What did you notice about your experience? What stood out? Um, so, Tom, go ahead. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I definitely felt aversion.
Yeah,
And not only the discomfort of aversion, but it was interesting because I was feeling discomfort on another level, which is that, I prepared for this the way I would prepare for, a lot of different Zoom meetings that I have. And so there's sort of a level of physical discomfort that I experienced because I didn't prepare to be in a more comfortable place,
yeah,
dressed more comfortably, the heat regulated, everything ready. Um, the other thing was a lot of fatigue at the beginning of the meditation that I noticed kind of vanished after a while. Um,
good.
that
Yeah.
was interesting to see. I was yawning a lot, and then I stopped doing that. So there were other things, but I'll end with that.
All right. I mean, just a couple of things. I mean, one of the things we can do to see deeply is to notice causal relationships. And so fatigue and aversion tend to go together. When you're tired, it's so much easier to feel aversion. Um, I don't know if that was the case tonight. You noticed that your fatigue went away, um, and that would be interesting to just notice. When you are mindful, it raises energy. When you actually notice experience very carefully, it raises energy. And so fatigue is a sinking kind of energy. And it's actually possible through attention, through careful attention, to raise energy as long as it's not of the agitated type. If you're just kind of being calmly mindful, something can begin to like become a little more buoyant. So you just can notice that. That was what came up tonight. Okay, Jenna, what did you notice? Or whatever you want to go, wherever you want to take us.
Thank you. So I do have a formal daily practice for myself, but I would not consider myself to be an experienced meditator. Um, and I would say one of the things that really stood out to me was the opportunity to have some guidance. And I don't practice with guidance in my own daily practice. And it can be really hard sometimes, but for whatever reason, I've been resistant to using guidance. I don't know if I like an analogy of having it be training wheels and I just like want to go for it, or I'm not quite sure how to describe that, but um, having your guidance I found to be incredibly helpful. And I think I'm realizing that it doesn't have to be all or one, and having a balance of listening to some recorded sessions could be really beneficial.
Good. Yeah. Glad you noticed that. They are kind of training wheels, but training wheels serve a really good purpose, you know. And, I find as a teacher of meditation and as a practitioner that you have to be reminded of the basics over and over and over. And even after 40 years of practice, it's still helpful for me to listen to somebody else give instructions. And they'll say something that will like help me to notice on a different level. So thanks. Nicole,
I don't know if Jen might have had her hand up before me, if that matters.
well, the computer thinks she didn't.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
All
it
right
put
then.
you first and her second, and I'll,
Okay.
I'll trust the
Just
way
wanted to make sure.
that. Yeah.
Um, all right. So first, thank you. Um, and one of the things that I noticed this time is just that I also, as like Tom said, I was super sleepy this time of the night. I'm just really tired. And so I noticed that as during the guidance. And but I think I chalk this next thing up to a kind of like renewed beginner's mind in a way. It's like coming back anew and the pleasure of that. I just had a lot of gratitude. And so at each step of the way, I was sleepy, and then your voice would come back, and I'd be called back. And then sometimes your voice wouldn't come back, and I wouldn't be called back till a little bit later. And I was like, wait, where am I in the body? That the gratitude kind of buoyed any or mitigated any kind of annoyance with myself that I might have had about, oh, I can't pay attention, I'm too sleepy. That it was a really nice feedback loop, I would say.
So this is skillfulness. This is how skillfulness is learned. Is you notice that gratitude as a response has a different result than judging yourself, you know? Because you could go down the judging road and get down on yourself for being tired and sleepy and nodding off, or you could focus on something that is a wholesome tone. And oddly enough, aversion will tend to make you more tired, and a wholesome tone will actually bring energy. That's how it works. That being said, for those of you who are real aversive types, and that's a whole thing, you're not. Don't blame yourself for that. Okay. Again, that's not a helpful or a wholesome kind of way to look at it. If your mind veers toward aversion, just start by seeing it as suffering, just quite simply. Oh, this is suffering. This is suffering, you know? See that as clearly as you can, rather than create an identity out of it, about something about yourself. Okay, thanks, Nicole. Jen, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks, Nicole. No worries. I so appreciate how thoughtful all these comments have been. I was very interested in Tom saying that he was yawning a lot at the beginning, and not to impose any point of view about what you were experiencing, but as soon as you said that, it made me think of a video I saw recently of somebody doing body work with a horse, and that one of the things about doing that kind of sort of acupressure and things with horses and other animals is that as the animal begins to relax and feel safe and calm and sort of in its body, they yawn a lot. That's one of the sort of symptoms of a body work session that's going well with an animal. And of course, we all are animals, so I'm always interested in how our fellow species are reacting to things. But just very quickly, also, in when you talk about aversion, Mark, it makes me think of an English teacher I had in high school who was so full of joy about every author that we read, no matter how different one from another, Steinbeck from Faulkner, from whoever. And she must have been some sort of Buddhist in some kind of way, because her way of really urging us to just appreciate all the different styles and not like bogged down in judging them and in being annoyed by them or not liking them, that it wasn't about that it was just, it was about learning and appreciating the variety, that is available to all of us. Anyway, I appreciate your guidance. I have been away from meditation for far too long, and so your guidance tonight was very reassuring.
All right, good. I'm glad to hear that. And I just love your story about the horse. That yawning. I realize as you were talking, that's absolutely true. Yawning is often the sign that your nervous system is changing state. It's relaxing in some way. Jennifer. Oh,
Sorry about that.
there
Well,
you
first I wanted to say that Jen, your comment about the horse was interesting because my brother brought me this gift today called The Book of Animal Secrets, Nature's Lessons for a Long and Happy Life, based on how animals, you may have read this before. But anyway, I look forward to reading it. But my question is, Mark, do you imply that most aversion is unwholesome?
Yes, in the sense that there's suffering in it. The feeling in the mind is a unpleasant feeling.
But like aversion to peanut butter,
Yeah, it's
is that
fine not to eat peanut butter if you don't like it.
like, is that unwholesome?
Yeah. In the moment where you're tasting peanut butter and not liking it, yes, there's an unwholesome state in the mind. And what to do with that skillfully? Don't eat peanut butter. So it's not a moral judgment about you if you feel aversion to certain foods. It's more probably genetic. It's probably just your being, but just technically, it's a moment of suffering.
So you would describe unwholesomeness as suffering. Is that a synonym?
It's unwholesome is a feeling tone in the mind that is suffering in the broadest sense. Yes. What do you think about aversion? Tell me a little bit about where your question is coming from.
Well, I think a lot about well, we often say that's not wholesome because of your teachings.
Yeah.
And I do believe that there's a balance in life and the yin and the yang of, I mean, and you mentioned life isn't always or shouldn't always be wholesome, but just be aware of it. But I do think that the unwholesome part, I mean, we might shame ourselves for unwholesome behaviors, which, like, if there is a balance, we shouldn't be doing that. But I don't know, aversion seems a lot more icky than, I don't know, maybe it is unwholesome. Everything aversive is unwholesome. I got to think about it.
You think about yeah, better than think about it. Notice through the week your unwholesome states. Just see if you can identify them. I think that would be better than thinking about them. And
Yeah.
just see in that moment, if you can see what I'm talking about, there's a particular tone the mind has in an unwholesome place. And whether the word suffering is really the best word for it, I'm not sure, because that sounds too dramatic sometimes. As I said, when you're a little bored, you may not say, oh, this is painful or this is suffering, because those seem like something big and dramatic. But nonetheless, it's uncomfortable. There's some discomfort in the mind. The mind isn't at ease in the experience. And so just to notice that and see if you can stay away from blame, like the sort of moral level of this, like you're supposed to not be bored, or good Buddhists are never bored, or that sort of thinking is a recipe for more suffering, I think. Just simply see the nature of your experience in that way, moment to moment. And tell us next week what you noticed.
Okay.
We'll all be kind of scientists here, and our course of investigation for the week is our states of mind. And because I've mentioned aversion, probably you'll all notice aversion more. That's kind of how these things work. So we're getting close to the end of our time, and I might just, since this is the first of a series, I'll just mention a little bit about meditating. Because there's usually some people who are relatively new to meditating or coming back to it after a while. So what I find helpful is to do it every day if you can. I think a daily habit develops better than a sporadic habit. And that happens the best if you have a time you're going to do it. When you wake up in the morning, what the time is that you meditate. And it helps. It isn't always possible on everybody's schedule, but it helps if it's the same time every day. If you can't do that, you can't do that. But at least if you know on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays I can do it this day, and Tuesday, Thursdays I can do it at this time. That's helpful. If I don't know when I'm going to meditate when I get up in the morning, it tends to not happen. It's really helpful to know this is when it happens. And to set a time that's the right length of time, that's going to vary from person to person. I suggest you start with 20 minutes. We do a half an hour in this class, so if you're listening to me talk you through it, you could probably do a half an hour. But if you're not, 20 minutes, it's a nice length of time. It's usually not too much for people to find in their schedule. If you get too ambitious, sometimes that makes it harder to meditate, and I'd rather you do less. I'd rather you do 10 minutes than not do it at all, or 5 minutes than not do it at all. So you begin to get in the habit, and to do it at the time which you think is the best for you. I mean, I'm a morning person, and so I swear by getting up, having my cup of tea, and sitting down to meditate. Then it's the first thing that's going to happen, and it happens. But a lot of people can't do that. People who aren't morning people, that would not be the time to do it. So you have to find another time in your day. Maybe a break at work, maybe when you come home from work. And if you're one of those people who are wide awake in the evening, do it in the evening. So be intentional about it. Take the time, even right after this class, to just think about when it could happen and what are the conditions that have to help you. One thing I'll mention is don't meditate with your phone in the room, okay? If you're at all tempted by your phone, put it somewhere else. Some people can just turn off the sound, and that's enough. But there's a lot of addiction to phone going on out there in the world, so that's a helpful thing. It's helpful to tell the people you live with what you're doing and not to bother you. And then whatever happens, go with it. You notice, your child wakes up earlier than you expected, and they want you, and they interrupt you, and you have to go deal with them. Just notice your experience as it unfolds, and make whatever choice you have to. All right, so that's just a basic kind of talk on meditation, and so I'll send you off for the week, and be well, and come back next week and tell me about what you noticed. Okay?